What is even less known than an already unknown game? Exactly, my YouTube channel. Wait, that wasn't what I meant. Exactly, the sequel to the unknown game. In our case, Silent Hill Mobile 2, which continues the story of Silent Hill Orphan, or Mobile depending on who you ask. I made a review about that game as well, so check that out too if you haven't already, to get the full context for this game. Anyway, it released in 2008, almost a full year after the first game. It's a point and click adventure as well, and was developed by Game Federation Studio again, who are still completely unknown and who haven't done anything else. Unsurprisingly, it's very similar to the first game. The basic gameplay remains completely unchanged. We got some enemies again, this time actually 2 different types, which doesn't mean a lot because 1 out of 3 enemies is the last boss. We got puzzles and the usual key item hunt again, of course an other world, and everything you would expect. This time there are only 2 instead of 3 playable characters though, but the game still follows the same design from the first game, that everything the first character solved remains like that, so that the second only has to solve the rest to get to the end. Apart from that, we are now in a hospital instead of an orphanage. So let's find out what has changed, what is better, what is worse, and maybe this is finally the hidden gem I was hoping for in the first game. But before we dive into the story, I want to mention that I will spoil large parts of the story and some parts of the gameplay. So skip to the mark on screen if you want to skip to the gameplay section to avoid story spoilers, or skip to the conclusion if you want to experience all of the game for yourself. The story features basically only 3 characters. Karen, who returns from Silent Hill Orphan after the game ended on a cliffhanger, Lucas, who is the first playable character, and Vincent, who is the second one. And although the game is similar in length, it felt quite a bit shorter because of the reduction in characters. But fair point to the game, it features several more characters in the form of names on notes, lockers and even puzzles. So it actually feels bigger in scope than the first game. Anyway, like I said, we start with Lucas, and it begins with a dialogue between Karen and Lucas. For some reason, Karen is extremely weird and creepy in this game, although she seemed pretty normal in the first game considering the circumstances. There we find out that she killed the 30 children at the orphanage, because Alessa, yes, the one from the games, manipulated her into doing that. She doesn't remember that anymore until the end of the game, which quickly ends after she confronts Alessa, because obviously she didn't exactly approve of that. Honestly, I expected that the game would start exactly from that point, and I still have no idea how everyone ended up in a hospital, and I'm seriously wondering why they decided to switch up her character so much. Anyway, she is super weird now and tells Lucas some shit that he shouldn't touch anything and that he is special. After some puzzle solving, we get another dialogue, where we find out that Lucas doesn't remember anything at all as well, and that his skin feels warm and that he is in pain, which is deeply concerning. Later we also find out that a man is coming, who is supposedly responsible for his pain according to Karen, who doesn't seem like the most trustworthy source considering how she acts, but anyway, I'm sure she's telling the truth, so we have to punish him. After that we enter the other world. Shortly after we find that shit thing hanging from the ceiling, with the note, "Bill is the father of Mary. Mary's offspring Lucas is here." So the thing I just called shit is our grandfather. Bruh. Yeah, it's getting interesting. But do you know what's interesting as well? That many of you haven't subscribed to my channel even though you watch my videos. So please subscribe if you want to support me. Thanks, but let's continue with this heartbreaking story. After quite a bit of puzzle solving and gaming and more creepy dialogues with Karen, we finally open her locker and nothing. Apart from the screaming and bleeding Lucas mentions. In the other world, we get to see dead fetuses in front of the locker, which represent the dead children she killed in the first game. Apparently, she tried to revive them with some weird magic shit and Lucas was the only one she could, to quote her, save, which is also the reason he is special and why he feels like he's burning. Anyway, we actually get to meet Karen in person and we use that opportunity to smash her head with a steel pipe. Because Lucas wants the lies to go away, so basically just everything Karen says. After that we switch to Vincent, who is the man Karen said is coming. So yeah, she actually didn't lie, at least in that aspect. She sent him a message that he should meet her there and that idiot actually came. Anyway, we have a spooky voice that wants to play with us, but they didn't ask us if we even want to play a game. The game progresses fast at that point though, and we quickly come to the end. A weird fuck face in the wall. And that face I just called fuck is Lucas, who blames us as well for the pain and wants to kill us. So yeah, that doesn't really work out for him and we kill him. I'm a bit confused at this point because Lucas believes that Karen lied to him, but he still wants to kill Vincent. At the same time, Vincent actually seems to have done something because he says that he only wanted to help. And did I already mention that he is Lucas' father? Anyway, the game ends with another to be continued screen, just like the first game. To be honest, I think the story is interesting and it took me more than in the first game. But at the same time it's also confusing and I don't get why everyone is constantly switching how they behave. I expect that we will find out in the third game. But overall it really wasn't too bad, and like I said, I actually enjoyed the story more than the first game. So good job, I guess. The gameplay remains largely unchanged. The backtracking, that was one of my least favorite things about the first game, is not remotely as bad and annoying. There were still times where it was maybe slightly too much back and forth, but nothing as extreme as the literal 3 or 4 times of going back and forth in a row as an orphan. They actually added an alternate moving method, which is miles better. Instead of having to go all the way to one side of the screen, you can press 0 to get these funny arrows which enable that you can just press on the direction pad of the phone to move the way you want to go. Apart from being much faster and less annoying, it also is much more immersive and it almost seems like a first-person game because of that. Especially because instead of just having one direction you can look at, there are now 4. So instead of being only able to look forward, you can now look in every direction, which is extremely cool and looks much better. The combat remains completely unchanged, but there's one enemy less and they felt a bit weaker. There are also 2 weapons now, the pipe and pistol, but they function the exact same. Overall, I didn't have any problems with the combat, while I disliked it in the first game. So the 2 points I disliked in the first game are now a lot better. Unfortunately, the key item hunt and puzzles were a bit more annoying this time. My main problem is that there are often moments where you can easily miss the key item because you have to be exactly on it, because otherwise you don't get the right message and can't pick it up. It happened several times to me that I clicked on an object but not on a little detail, like for example a nameplate on a locker, because I assumed that it was just part of the rest of the object. That led to me being sometimes a bit confused or stuck, because I didn't know what I had to do. You can very well argue that's my fault and just a skill issue, but in my opinion this was just unnecessarily annoying and is bad designed. Especially because it wasn't a problem in the first game. I think they should have either made these small little details more obvious, or they should have just made it that way that you can just click on the big object and get the small key item. Apart from that, there are also less puzzles in general that are much more abstract though, and there were also several times where I wondered how the fuck you're supposed to know something. The most stupid example of this is probably when you need to get a coin out of a drain, but need something small because your fingers are too fat. Well, I thought the solution would be something like tweezers, but no, you have to take the leg of a chair, which you couldn't remove before, and that looks completely normal, and then you have to select it on some weird shit on another chair in a completely different room, so that the leg is sticky. And I don't think there's any hint for that, and I have no idea how a freaking chair leg is supposed to get through the opening of a drain. Stuff like that was just annoying and I think much more frustrating and confusing than in the first game. But apart from that, there's now a button to open the map, a button to open the inventory, and the button to taste, blow and talk was removed. All small changes that make sense and are good. I also prefer the layout of the hospital, because it's a bit more varied and more interesting than the orphanage in the first game. It's also cool that the basement consists of more than 2 rooms now. So overall, I feel very happy about the quality of life improvements, but unfortunately the previously fun puzzles and key item hunt is worse. Certainly not great, but I still had more fun than in the first game, so thumbs up for that. But I also want to talk about the presentation real quick as well. I preferred the look and graphics of the normal world. Everything is just less brown, more detailed, and it feels more like a real place than the orphanage. I also like the addition of more directions to look at, like I already said. Everything Go related was worse though. My highlight was probably the fetuses and Grandpa hanging from the ceiling. The rest was quite tame. The other world was also a bit of a letdown. I liked the changes to the rooms that were on a similar level to the first game, but all the hallways just felt the exact same but with a red filter, so I wasn't exactly impressed by that. So it's similar to the rest of the gameplay. Things that were previously the highlights are worse, but things that weren't good before are now better. Like in the first game, there's barely any audio, but when it's used, it's pretty effective. Because it's basically a jump scare that you even hear something. I also feel pretty positive about the dialogue. In my review about the first game I said it sounds a bit like a fanfiction sometimes, and I didn't have the same impression this time. But unfortunately the story is more confusing like I already said, but I still thought it was more interesting, so it remains a plus for me. I still don't think that these mobile Silent Hill games are hidden gems or anything too special. I also remain of the opinion that they are only worth playing if you are really into Silent Hill and don't have anything else to do for an hour or two, but overall I have to admit that I enjoyed this part more than the first. Although it's disappointing how for every step they took forward with the quality of life improvements, they also took a step backwards with the key item and puzzle design. But let me know in the comments if you have heard of this game before, and if yes, what do you think of it? Thanks for watching, please subscribe and share this video if you liked it. And now I will suffer through Silent Hill Mobile free, just for you guys. See you next time.